Good afternoon, pros. Kate here from Cole's Classroom with a quick editing tip for you. And this one is going to be all about how to get those beautiful brown eyes to pop. So as you can see, I have here in front of me a really adorable picture from a donut smash of a gorgeous little girl with big brown eyes. I'm going to zoom into that one-to-one again so that you can get a good look while I'm doing this. So as you can see, this little girl has the most amazingly beautiful big brown eyes. But as you can start to get a glimpse of right here over on this side where they picked up a little bit more light, and you can actually see my PLM in them, which is not a problem in my opinion. If it bothers you, you could definitely Photoshop it out. You could also Photoshop out the portion of it that is like the handle of the PLM, the stand, so that it's less obvious that it's not just a normal catch light. You could also position the PLM differently in this shot to avoid getting the reflection of the PLM in the little girl's eyes. But remember, hardly anybody is ever going to be zoomed in this far into the photo. So when it's pulled back, they just look like adorable catch lights and it's not bothering anybody. So if you're me, you like to just take things easy, don't make more work than we need, don't stress out about something your clients aren't even going to notice, and let's move on. The point of this video is to talk about how to get this little girl's eyes to really pop. As you can start to see here where the light was catching in her eye a little bit more, she actually does have some really gorgeous lighter brown color and dimension and warmth to the brown of her iris. However, it can sometimes be very difficult to capture that in people with brown eyes unless you have light facing them, sort of going directly into their face, which can then not be the most flattering lighting for portraits particularly. So if you've ever photographed a baby with beautiful big blue eyes or green eyes, you know that people with lighter eyes, it's a lot easier to get that pop in their eyes. And usually we go ahead and we actually add an iris enhance to the iris of their eyes. So I'm going to run that over her brown eyes quickly so you can see what it does to her brown eyes. And honestly, it's helpful, but it's a very little change. So if I did this over a person with bright blue eyes or green eyes, you would see that this actually would increase the saturation, which would make the color and vibrancy of the color of their eyes pop out. And they have plenty of light usually coming through the iris of their eyes because it's a lighter color. And so it's just easier to get that pop. But in the case of people with brown eyes, especially a deeper color brown, when the light is not hitting them the correct way to really make them light up like that, we need to go ahead and help it out by lifting some of the shadows that are holding down that brown color in their eyes so that they appear more the way that they actually do in person when you look into their eyes, and they have a little bit more of that pop, that three-dimensional effect where you can sort of look into their eyes. So the first thing I always do is actually just sharpen to my preference, add a little bit of sharpness to the eyes. But the next thing I'm going to do, which I normally never do with people with lighter colored eyes, but which is an awesome tool for people with brown eyes, is to actually lift some of the shadows. So I usually like to start around 30. And as you can see, what that did was just lift a lot of the shadows out of her eyes so that you can actually see the different tones of browns in her eyes. She has some lighter copper colors, some amber, some darker streaks of brown, and she actually has a little starburst going around the iris of her eye that you can see in person, which is how I first learned this technique, was actually just by being observant and noticing the difference between my daughter's brown eyes in person when she's looking out the window into the sun at golden hour, and on photos with some different lighting, and trying to match that, because that's one of our goals always, is to represent the features as accurately as possible, but also to their best sort of representation. So lifting those shadows usually to plus 30 is usually an awesome start for me. If it's a little bit too much, I'm going to lift it a little bit more so you can see what I mean. If it makes them a little bit too light, where they are no longer accurate to how that person's eyes look in real life, then you're just going to bring the deepness back a little bit by adding more of those shadows back in. And if you need a little bit more lightening, then you can just lift those shadows a tiny bit more. The other tool that can be really helpful is to add just a tiny bit of warmth. to the eyes. Usually like a 4 or 5 will do it, and that will just help to get that extra pop, similarly to what we do with saturation, which works really well for blues and greens. When it is saturating the color more, it's also adding a little pop of vibrancy to the hue of the color of the eye. But with browns, I find that just adding saturation doesn't necessarily enhance that hue like it would to a blue eye or a green eye. So enhancing its natural hue, which happens by increasing the warmth of the brown, just a tiny bit can again reflect more of that accuracy of the true iris color and also add a little bit of that dimension to the eye. So I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out a little bit for you now. As you can see, when I pull back, her eyes don't look unrealistic. They don't look painted on. They're very accurate to how her eyes actually look in person, but they have a certain amount of depth and punch to them, a certain amount of variety in the tones of the brown like they actually do in real life. So this is a really great technique for adding that punch of color to brown eyes. I'm going to go ahead quickly and show you the before and after. So this picture on the left obviously wasn't edited at all either. You can see I made some adjustments to a few things. Some of the discoloration under her eyes. She has a vein that runs across the bridge of her nose that I did edit, and I added a little bit of overall warmth to the image. But you can see if I zoom in the difference in the eye and how much light it's catching and how much variation we're getting in the different hues and tones that really help to add that punch and that detail like you would see in real life. All right, I hope that this video helps you when editing people's portraits with brown eyes. Let me know if you have any questions or if you've tried any other methods that worked really well for you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.